Black Panther. Thousands of years ago, a meteorite made of vibranium, the strongest material in the universe, hit the African continent, affecting all plant life around that region. When the first humans appeared in those lands, 5 great tribes settled down and called that place Wakanda. These tribes live constantly at war, until one day when a warrior received a vision from the panther goddess, who led him to the heart-shaped herb. After ingesting this plant, the warrior was blessed with superhuman strength, speed and instinct. After this, he became king and the first Black Panther in history, whose mission was to protect Wakanda. 4 of the 5 tribes agreed to live under the rule of the Great King, but the Jabari tribe isolated itself in the mountains. Over time, the people of Wakanda began using vibranium to develop technologies far more advanced than any other nation. However, as Wakanda prospered, the rest of the world sank into chaos. To keep the vibranium and all their technology safe, the Wakandans went into hiding and disappeared off the map. In this way, they were able to hide the truth about their power. In the year 1992, in Oakland, a city in California, some teenagers practiced basketball on the makeshift court next to the building where they lived. Suddenly, a luminous aircraft begins to move above the clouds. In one of the apartments are Njobu and his partner James. Both were planning a break-in when they hear someone knocking on the door. James then grabs a gun and goes to answer it. Upon opening the door, 2 women with strange uniforms and spears in their hands enter the house and order Njobu to identify himself. The man introduces himself as Azuri's son and brother of T'Chaka, the current king of Wakanda. To prove that he is telling the truth, he shows the blue tattoo that is hidden on his lower lip. Only the descendants of the nation have that mark. Just then, T'Chaka appears and they both kneel before the king. Njobu introduces James to his brother and claims to trust him with his life. After they embrace, T'Chaka tells them that Wakanda recently suffered an attack and a man named Ulysses Klaue stole 250,000 pounds of vibranium, placed a bomb on the border of Wakanda and escaped. Many deaths were caused, and the most intriguing thing is that Ulysses knew where the Wakandans hid the vibranium and how to attack. This means that he had the help of someone from the inside to penetrate the barrier. Then T'Chaka looks into his brother's eyes and asks why he betrayed his people. Njobu claims he didn't do it, but T'Chaka asks James to reveal his true identity and unmask the traitor. The boy is actually called Zuri and has been sent by the king to watch over Njobu on his spy mission. Upon discovering the truth, the man is furious, as James was the person he trusted most. After coming across the evidence of that crime, T'Chaka informs him that he will take his brother back home, where he will face the council to find out what his sentence will be. Minutes later, Eric, Njobu's son, and his friends spot the aircraft leaving. 26 years later, T'Chaka dies during an attack and the Wakandans must name a new king. Culturally, the eldest prince is responsible for assuming this position, and everyone hopes that T'Challa will become the new ruler. However, before his coronation ceremony, the prince travels to the Sambisa forest in Nigeria to conduct a search. His mission is to rescue Nakia, his former girlfriend, from the hands of criminals who trade in prisoners. After shutting down the vehicle's engines, the Black Panther hides in the forest while the smugglers take their weapons to defend themselves from the attack. When she realizes that the men are distracted, Nakia steps up to find out what is going on and helps T'Challa eliminate those men. Despite taking dozens of shots, the Black Panther suffers no damage, as his vibranium suit is an almost impenetrable fortress. After eliminating those guys, Nakia asks why T'Challa messes up her mission, since she is undercover as a spy. While they are talking, a criminal who was in hiding uses one of the women who were captured as a hostage, but Okoye soon appears and quickly neutralizes the threat. At that moment, T'Challa tells Nakia about his father's death and asks her to accompany him to attend his coronation ceremony. Before leaving, the woman releases all the victims and states that they are now free to go home. When they return to Wakanda, the trio contemplates the unparalleled beauty of that place surrounded by mountains. Contrary to what the rest of the world believes, Wakanda is not a poor, third-world country. The truth is that this is the most highly developed place on the planet, which has technologies that are impossible to find anywhere else on Earth. After landing, they are met by Queen Ramonda and Princess Shuri. The girl is the responsible of all the technology in the kingdom and claims to have made some upgrades to her brother's suit. Meanwhile, in London, Eric pays a visit to the Museum of Britain. As he looks at some ancient artifacts, one of the employees approaches him and the boy claims that one of those artifacts was stolen from Wakanda. Eric states that he will take the piece made of vibranium and wait until the substance that was previously placed in the attendant's coffee cup takes effect. When the woman falls to the floor, Eric calls for help and 2 men disguised as paramedics appear at the museum with a stretcher. Among them is Ulysses Klaue, who shoots the security guards while a woman on his team hacks the cameras so that his partners can finish the robbery without the police showing up. Ulysses uses his mechanical hand to break the glass and get the artifact. Before leaving, Eric steals a mask from the exhibit and the group returns to the ambulance, where the boy celebrates the success of the mission with his girlfriend. The next day, the 4 tribes gather at the waterfall to attend the coronation ceremony. When Prince T'Challa arrives at the site, Shuri gives him a tea that can remove the Black Panther's strength from his body. In this way, the prince can fight on equal terms with any other warrior who decides to challenge him in a contest for the throne. However, none of the 4 tribes wish to send a challenger and they gladly accept T'Challa's reign. However, just as he was about to be crowned, the Jabari tribe shows up and M'Baku decides to challenge the prince for the right to the throne. The fight begins and T'Challa starts at a disadvantage, being knocked down easily by M'Baku. Soon the prince gets up and the duel continues. T'Challa lands a few blows on his opponent, but M'Baku manages to grab him with his spear and strikes his head. However, upon hearing the cheering of his mother and sister, the prince regains his strength and fights back. He ends up getting his chest pierced, but manages to remove the spear and overpower his opponent. When he was about to eliminate him, the prince asks M'Baku to surrender, otherwise he will have to take his life, because this is how the winner of the duel is decided. T'Challa does not want to eliminate that man, so he asks him to step down and states that the Jabari tribe needs its leader. Upon hearing this, M'Baku accepts his defeat and the other tribes celebrate the victory of their new king, who, in addition to being crowned, also carries the title of Black Panther. That night, T'Challa must go through one last stage. Following the tradition of his ancestors, he drinks the heart-shaped herb and is then buried in a bed of sand. Seconds later, the new king is taken to the ancestral plane, where he meets his father again. He remembers the day his father was eliminated during an assassination attempt. Since then, T'Challa feels guilty for not having been able to save him. The boy wakes up in a forest and sees a tree full of Black Panthers. Among them is his father, who transforms himself to talk to him. They embrace and T'Challa asks his father to teach him how to become a great king to protect Wakanda. Therefore, T'Chaka gives his son some advice. He advises the boy to surround himself with trustworthy people, for many adversities are on the way. After hearing this, T'Challa wakes up and feels extremely happy that he had the privilege of seeing his father again. A few days pass and the king walks through the city beside Nakia. He asks his girlfriend not to leave, but she says she has a purpose to fulfill. Nakia says that she cannot live happily in that place knowing that there are so many people living in misery and without any kind of support. She would like Wakanda to help these most vulnerable people, but T'Challa needs to keep his kingdom hidden from the rest of the world, as this is how they have been able to survive for so long. Upon hearing Nakia's ideas, T'Challa states that she would make a great queen. Hours later, he goes to visit Wakabi, his good friend. After feeding one of his rhinos, the man receives a call from his wife, Okoye, who requests the presence of the two of them in the castle. After gathering all the council members, the woman reveals that a Wakandan artifact has been stolen from the British Museum by Ulysses Klaue, who plans to sell it to an American buyer. They arrange to meet in South Korea the evening of the next day. Ever since he stole much of the vibranium from those lands, Ulysses has been in hiding. Therefore, this is the perfect opportunity to capture him and have him tried for his crimes. Before embarking on this mission, T'Challa pays a visit to his sister, who gives him some devices to use while in Korea. Among them is a communication device with unlimited range. Finally, the girl presents the new Black Panther suit, which consists of a super stylish necklace that can be activated only with the mind. During a test, Shuri asks her brother to kick the suit and the mannequin is thrown away. Next, T'Challa kicks the same spot again and is repelled. This is because that uniform stores kinetic energy and keeps it stored for later redistribution. The next night, the king arrives in Busan, Korea, accompanied by Nakia and Okoye. They enter a bar and must pass through a metal detector, for weapons are forbidden there. The trio splits up in order to find the buyer and T'Challa spots Agent Ross, an old friend who works for the CIA. He then approaches them and discovers that Ross is the American who will buy Ulysses' merchandise. The agent intends to arrest the smuggler during the negotiation, but T'Challa says he will take Ulysses with him to Wakanda. When the criminal finally appears, he arrives accompanied by several security guards, all of them armed to the teeth. Ross goes to find him and asks his assistant to deliver a suitcase full of diamonds, which is payment for the stolen artifact. While preparing to attack, Okoye is discovered and has to get rid of the security guards. At that moment, a shootout breaks out and T'Challa is forced to reveal his true identity. The trio of Wakandans rush to take down their enemies in order to minimize damage and casualties. T'Challa manages to surround Ulysses, but is attacked with an extremely powerful weapon, which throws the Black Panther away. After escaping, the man is pursued by Okoye and Nakia. Then T'Challa appears and enlists the help of his sister to pilot his car remotely during the chase. Seconds later, the hero manages to reach the first vehicle and throws out the criminals inside. Meanwhile, further ahead, the thieves try to eliminate the warriors with firearms, but they are safe inside a car made of vibranium. Okoye asks Nakia to drive while she uses her magnetic shoes to climb into the vehicle and hurl her spear at her enemies. In a single blow, the warrior is able to stop those guys from escaping. After being shot dozens of times, Black Panther's new suit is full of stored kinetic energy. Under Shuri's guidance, the hero jumps into one of the enemy vehicles and releases all the accumulated power. In this way, the car is completely destroyed. Now only one target remains, and that is the vehicle Ulysses is in. Seeing his executioners approaching, the villain hangs out the window and uses his mechanical arm to fire a laser beam strong enough to disintegrate the vibranium car. Despite the attack, the warriors manage to escape unharmed and are given a ride by Agent Ross. Soon after, T'Challa also has his vehicle destroyed and Shuri is immediately disconnected. During the explosion, the Black Panther jumps into the smuggler's car and rips off one of the wheels, causing a serious accident. Ulysses gets out of the car and attacks T'Challa. However, his suit absorbs all the impact and the king manages to rip the man's mechanical arm off. Furious, the Panther is about to eliminate that man who has caused so much harm to his people, but changes his mind when he realizes that there are dozens of people recording that scene. The criminal is then sent to a prison for questioning. Ross asks where Ulysses got that cannon arm and the criminal claims that his weapon is a Wakandan technology made of vibranium, which is why it is so powerful. Ross believed that Wakanda is a third-world country and is surprised to discover that these people possess such powerful technology. During his reign, King T'Chaka claimed that Ulysses stole all of his nation's vibranium, but the criminal denies this claim, claiming that the 250,000 kilograms he stole represents only a small part of the kingdom's entire wealth. Seeing the truth about his people being exposed, King T'Challa prepares to make an escape. Meanwhile, Nakia watches the security cameras and notices that these are not live images. This makes her suspect that they are the victims of an attack and she runs to warn her companions. During the shootout, Ross jumps in front of Nakia and ends up getting shot as the criminals flee with Ulysses. Before leaving, Eric throws a grenade at the police station, but the Panther jumps on top of the bomb and manages to neutralize the explosion with his suit. He tries to pursue the kidnappers, but is surprised when a weapon unique to his people is used to bring him down. As he watches in bewilderment as his enemies flee, the king spots a ring belonging to the royal family of Wakanda hanging around the neck of the masked guy. Just then, Okoye appears to deliver some sad news. To save Nakia, Agent Ross jumped in front of the bullet and had his spinal cord hit. The technology of that nation is not able to save him, so the woman asks permission to take him to Wakanda, where he will be treated. Okoye is opposed to this idea, but T'Challa believes that this is the fairest way to thank his old friend for saving the woman he loves. While Shuri uses her technology to treat the American, the king is visited by Wakabi, who is there to find out what happened to Ulysses. Almost 30 years ago, when the criminal attacked Wakanda, several warriors were eliminated, including Wakabi's parents. Therefore, upon discovering that T'Challa did not eliminate him when he had the chance, his trust in his king is shaken. Meanwhile, Eric takes Ulysses and the rest of the team to a small plane, which they will use to leave the country. However, the boy has other plans and asks Ulysses to leave him in Wakanda. The criminal then refuses to do so, for he knows how powerful the warriors there are. To force him to follow his orders, Eric shoots the pilot and points the gun at his partner. The man then takes the boy's girlfriend hostage, believing that this will help him stay alive. However, contrary to all expectations, Eric himself shoots the woman and then goes after Ulysses. The man tries to hide, but is soon hit in the abdomen. As he is about to die, Ulysses says that Eric will never be able to enter that country, and is surprised to discover that his partner in crime has a blue tattoo on his lower lip, indicating that he is a descendant of those people. Just then, Eric finishes his work and uses the plane to go to Africa. Meanwhile, T'Challa goes to the sacred garden to talk to Zuri. The king asks what, in fact, happened to his uncle, Njobu, since his father says that he simply disappeared. He tells of seeing a man in Korea wearing a ring identical to the one his father gave him. After being pressed by the king, Zuri tells him that Njobu took a group of warriors to America and T'Chaka put him there to observe what was being done, without his brother knowing. Then Njobu fell in love with an American woman and they had a son. All the suffering and adversity that the prince saw in that country made him become a radical. Njobu wanted to give vibranium weapons so that minorities could defend themselves in that country where they are treated with such disregard. However, he knew that his brother, the king of Wakanda, would never support this. Therefore, the man chose to betray his nation by helping Ulysses steal the vibranium. When he was informed that he would return to Wakanda to face the council, N'Jobu became enraged and pulled a gun on Zuri, his informant. To save him, T'Chaka had to eliminate his own brother with a single blow to the chest. The king asked Zuri never to comment on what happened, and then they left, leaving Eric, N'Jobu's son, alone behind. The next morning, the boy appears at the border of the country and is met by W'Kabi and his men. Eric is carrying Ulysses' body, and so he soon wins the sympathy of the Wakandan, who has finally obtained revenge for the death of his parents. When Ross wakes up, he can hardly believe that he can walk after having his spine shot out. Immediately, the agent meets Shuri and introduces himself, but the girl has already researched absolutely everything about him. The man is impressed to see the place and is delighted with that level of technology. He asks what those light panels around the train tracks are, and Shuri informs him that those are sonic stabilizers. In its raw form, vibranium is dangerous to be transported at high speed, so she found a way to temporarily disable them. Suddenly, the girl receives a call from Okoye, who informs her that a foreigner has crossed the barrier and entered the country. At that moment, T'Challa is isolated on a mountain beside Nakia and tells her what he discovered the night before. He blames his father for leaving a child behind alone instead of taking him to be part of his people. While lamenting, T'Challa receives a call from his sister. The girl asks him to come to her office immediately, and when he gets there, she informs him about the invasion. Ross claims to know that man and tells him that Eric is a former Marine who worked in Afghanistan, where he accumulated hundreds of eliminations. Escorted by W'Kabi, Eric is taken to the council, where he reveals himself to be the son of N'Jobu, the prince who was eliminated by his brother. As such, he also possesses royal blood and has the right to duel T'Challa for the throne. The king then accepts the challenge, and once again, at the waterfall, he has the power of the Black Panther removed from his body. Before the fight begins, Eric states that he has waited his entire life for that moment. He has a mark on his body for every person he has killed, and he did this as training until he had the opportunity to take T'Challa's life. The fight begins and the king uses his shield to protect himself from his cousin's ferocious attacks. After exchanging a few blows, T'Challa manages to knock his opponent down and tries to get him to surrender. However, Eric stands up and attacks him again. The king has another chance to eliminate him, but his goal is to make the boy give up the fight. This generosity ends up giving an opportunity so that Eric can wound him and pierce his abdomen with a sword. When T'Challa was about to be eliminated, Zuri interferes in the fight and reveals that he was responsible for his father's death. Eric kills him and then throws T'Challa into the waterfall. In order to keep the royal family safe, Nakia flees with the queen and princess while the new king is crowned. That night, she meets with Okoye and asks for the woman's help in destroying Eric. However, the warrior claims to be loyal to the throne of Wakanda, no matter who sits on it. Determined to save her nation, Nakia grabs some clothes and goes to get Ross. Eric is performing the ritual at this moment, and after ingesting the heart-shaped herb, he is sent to the ancestral plane, where he finds his father. N'Jobu feels guilty for the man his son has become and, in tears, says he should have taken the boy to Wakanda when he had the chance. After taking Ross to the queen, Nakia needs to do one last thing before she leaves. She goes to the sacred garden and steals a unit of the heart-shaped herb. At this point, Eric wakes up and orders his servants to burn the entire garden, because he doesn't want any other king to have access to the Black Panther's powers. After sitting on the throne, the tyrant king informs us that he will send vibranium to be used by black people scattered all over the earth, so that they can subdue their oppressors. W'Kabi is the only member of the council who agrees with this revolution, but everyone must obey the king's orders. In the mountains, the quartet walks toward M'Baku's lair, as Nakia plans to give him the last specimen of the heart-shaped herb. The queen suggests that the warrior take the Black Panther's powers, but Nakia knows that she will need an army to dethrone Eric. Therefore, she proceeds with her plan to deliver the plant to M'Baku, the leader of the only tribe that is not loyal to the crown. As they approach the cave entrance, they are captured by the Jabari and taken to their ruler. M'Baku is informed that an outsider has become the king and is about to destroy Wakanda. Nakia gives him the heart-shaped herb, however, the man has a big surprise. He leads the small group to an isolated location where T'Challa is being held. At that moment, ice is the only thing keeping him alive. One of the fishermen from the Jabari clan found him comatose on the riverbank. The queen then prepares tea and gives it to her son. Minutes later, T'Challa wakes up, determined to take back the crown. Shuri hands her brother the Black Panther necklace and T'Challa asks for a moment alone with M'Baku. He thanks him for saving his life, and the man claims that he was just paying a debt. T'Challa asks if the Jabari leader can lend some warriors to help him regain the throne. But M'Baku refuses. This being the case, T'Challa must return alone and demands that the duel continue, since there has been no surrender and he is still alive. However, Eric refuses to duel again and states that he is now the king. The man orders his servants to send ships containing equipment made of vibranium to various parts of the planet. By this time, Shuri has made it to her lab and enlists Ross's help to destroy the aircraft before those powerful weapons fall into the wrong hands. The man pilots a warplane remotely and his mission is to destroy the aircraft before they cross the border. To defend his current king, W'Kabi leads his men in a battle against T'Challa, but Okoye decides to support her former king and orders her warriors to arrest Eric. A great war breaks out and the Black Panther must fight against those who were once his allies. At Okoye's command, the warriors appear to help him in this battle and fight against their own husbands to defend Wakanda. Seeing her warrior friends being defeated by Eric, Nakia decides to confront him, and Shuri uses her vibranium gun to try to neutralize the threat. Despite being a great warrior, Nakia does not possess the powers of a Black Panther, so she ends up losing the battle. Shuri continues with her ranged attacks, but is also defeated. Seeing his sister about to be eliminated, T'Challa uses the power of his suit to knock down all of his enemies and runs toward his cousin. They both fall onto the train tracks and continue the duel. T'Challa then asks his sister to start the train so that stabilizers will deactivate the vibranium uniforms. In this way, he and Eric will be unprotected. Meanwhile, on the surface, the warriors are surrounded and forced to surrender. Just when victory seemed to be decided, the Jabari warriors appear and attack all those who oppose T'Challa. Shuri's laboratory is under attack and Ross must eliminate the aircraft before the glass is destroyed. Being an experienced war pilot, the man is able to destroy the ships and stop the vibranium from leaving the border before the laboratory was invaded. After a few minutes of fighting, T'Challa is about to be defeated, but there is still hope. He takes advantage of the last few seconds when the stabilizers are on to take the knife out of his cousin's hands and pierce his chest. Although he does not want to take his life, T'Challa knows that this is the only way to save Wakanda. In his last minutes of life, Eric asks to see the sunset, because his father always said that Wakanda's sunsets are the most beautiful there is. T'Challa then takes him to the top of a mountain and allows his cousin to fulfill his last wish before he dies. After re-establishing his place on the throne, the king thanks Nakia for being loyal to his family until the last second. He asks the woman to stay with him in Wakanda and assures her that he will help her fulfill her purpose. Weeks pass and T'Challa travels to Oakland along with Shuri. He reports that he has bought the building where his uncle died and all the other buildings around it. That will be Wakanda's first international aid center. Nakia will act as supervisor and Shuri will be the leader of the information and science exchange. The first members of that Wakandan help center will be the kids who are playing basketball on that court. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, please like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.